Hello and welcome to Fernbank Science Center's The Sky This Week for the end of August, the 22nd through 28th, 2021. We start the week with a full moon, a blue moon, or the Sturgeon Moon. Look for some bright planets in the evening sky and find the last of the summer constellations high overhead. On Sunday, the 22nd, the moon is full. Actually, it's at 8:02 p.m. exactly, Eastern Daylight Time, that the moon appears full in the sky. And it's the third full moon of our season with 4 full moons in it. Could make it a blue moon. And indeed, it also is called various names depending on what was going on in the world around some of the native peoples here. For the people in the north, the full Sturgeon Moon. This was the time of year when those big bony fish were ready for catching. And those are huge, some of those fish. For the Cherokee people in our area, it was the growing corn moon or the drying corn moon. Crops were ready to start harvesting and storing for the winter. By Tuesday, the 24th, early in the evening, if you have a flat, dark, clear western horizon, you might be able to see the 2 planets closer to the sun in our solar system than Earth is. Look toward the west, that area where the sun appears to go down, appears to set. The bright evening star looks like a star. It's the planet Venus, a little bit higher up on the horizon, and Mercury just skimming the horizon, barely visible. If you're lucky, you might see Mercury as well. Those 2 planets, closer to the sun than Earth is, are visible in the early evening sky, again, if it's a clear, dark night. And that planet Venus, sometimes called the evening star, was visited a few weeks ago by 2 spacecraft flowing past Venus, using the planet's gravity to change their orbits for their missions. One is NASA's Solar Orbiter. It's actually a joint mission. Love these international missions with the European Space Agency, looking at the sun, our star. The sun produces the environment around itself that stretches the whole solar system as part of it. By the Voyager spacecraft discovered the edges of that heliosphere, the bubble of energy that the sun produces, magnetic fields, charged particles. When those charged particles slam into Earth's magnetic field, we can get auroras. So it's interesting to find out what exactly is going on and how does the sun produce that space environment. That was the Solar Orbiter. The other spacecraft that went around on August 9th is the European Space Agency's Bepi-Colombo spacecraft. This one's eventually going to be in orbit around the planet Mercury, closest to the sun. Think about that environment. Those incredible charged particles, magnetic fields, intense heat, and you still have to have your little spacecraft operational when it gets to Mercury. It would seem like sending a planetary mission, perhaps, toward an inner planet like Mercury would be pretty easy. Plenty of gravity from the sun, just pull that little spacecraft right along. But that's where it gets complicated. It's going to take years, about 7 years, for this little mission to get into place along its orbit so that it can actually study the planet Mercury. It launched in 2018. And it arrives in its proper orbit around 2025. And this little craft has used Venus's gravity, again, to change its orbit and get it more into where it needs to be for its long mission. By the end of the week, bright planets are on both sides of the sky. If you face the south, if you remember where the sun went down, the west, put your right shoulder in that direction, you'll be facing the south. The brightest objects in the sky are the planets, either ones farther from the sun than Earth, Jupiter and Saturn, for example, or one closer to the sun, the planet Venus. A word of disclaimer, this diagram shows big dots where the planets are. On the real sky, the planets appear like really bright stars, but they're little tiny dots like regular stars. And the regular stars are the fun ones in between those 2 sets of planets. Looking toward the south part of the sky, This is a wonderful image. If you have a really dark night sky, you might actually see where the Milky Way appears to touch the southern edge of our horizon. And there are a couple of bright constellations in that area with pretty easy to find shapes if you've got a good dark sky. One is a shape almost like a teapot, like a handle and a lid and a spout with steam coming out, the Milky Way, bottom of the teapot. This is the constellation of Sagittarius. In Greek mythology, he was an archer, a bow and arrow shooter, who actually was Chiron, one of the centaurs that was a teacher for Hercules, if you read that sort of mythology. The teapot shape is the easiest part of the constellation to find, although it includes many more stars around that area. The other good one is Scorpius, the scorpion, one of the few constellations that looks like what it's represented as. From the sting on the end of its tail, through the curve of the tail, up to the heart of the scorpion, Antares is the name of that star, to the front part, pedipalps, head and shoulders, as it were. And the constellation of Scorpius, the scorpion, another one of the zodiac constellations, and it's one of our summertime constellations. And it appears fairly close to the horizon where we live, and watching it move across the sky as the Earth rotates during the night, it's kind of fun to watch. Nice, bright stars. By the end of the week, those planets for Jupiter and Saturn in the eastern part of the sky. Now imagine that you can look way up to the very top of the sky and find 3 bright stars that make a giant triangle shape on the sky. It's big. If you use your left hand measuring stick, stretch your left arm out as straight as it'll go, lock your elbow, spread out your fingers as wide as they'll go, and you can fit your whole outstretched hand easily inside this large triangle, sometimes called the summer triangle. Each of the stars is in a different constellation. Each of them is supposed to be some sort of a bird. The star Vega, the brightest one, the highest up, is part of Lyra, the lyre, being carried by a vulture or a bird of prey through the sky. The lyre was the harp of Orpheus, the incredible songster from Greek mythology. The star Deneb at the end of the tail of Cygnus the swan. Here's Deneb, little tail, stubby body, long neck for the swan, big wings sticking out on each side. Again, sort of looks like what it's supposed to be, a giant swan. The third star in the triangle is Altair. It's part of Aquila, the eagle. To me, the eagle looks more like a long, skinny triangle rhombus, actually, than it does an eagle, but use your imagination. Those 3 are high in the sky, pretty early in the evening, and you can watch that whole pattern move, or appear to, as Earth continues its rotation. Thanks very much for listening. Please do check our website, www.fernbank.edu, for science information. Tune in on our Facebook page for the Friday evening virtual planetarium programs and Saturday science lessons. And again, have a great week.